It was 1978. Dan, who was going for his MBA at Harvard Business School, was in a financial class. He looked up at the blackboard. The professor had put up a financial model, a table with formulas and data, and was trying to show how the numbers would change under different scenarios. Dan thought, wait a minute, I have an idea. Because I'm quite old, I've witnessed the entire personal computer revolution from day one firsthand, and I can tell you that its beginnings were not exactly auspicious. In the early 1970s, when people thought of computers, they thought of either huge mainframes made by a group of manufacturers known as IBM and the Bunch, with the Bunch being an acronym for Burroughs, UNIVAC, NCR, Control Data, and Honeywell, or the so-called mini computers made by Digital Equipment Corp and Data General, among others. Only large corporations and institutions could afford these machines, and that was fine, because really, who needed computers besides airlines, banks, colleges, and hospitals anyway? What would you even do with one of those things at home? In 1971, Intel came up with the first commercially produced microprocessor. The microprocessor was known as a computer on a chip because it took arithmetic, logic, and control functions that previously occupied several large, costly circuit boards and put them all in a single integrated circuit, making it possible to manufacture them at high volume and relatively low cost. This development made what was initially known as a microcomputer, later dubbed a personal computer or PC, possible, and many companies started making them. The most popular of these early personal computers were 1977's so-called Holy Trinity: the Commodore PET 2001 on the left, Radio Shack's TRS-80 on the right, and Apple Computer's Apple II in the center. But personal computers, even the Holy Trinity, were stuck in the hobbyist and computer enthusiast markets. They were complicated and difficult to use, but even more importantly, there was no reason for anyone to have them in their home. No one had come up with anything useful a non-nerd could do with these things. They were oddities, the very definition of a niche product. Let's go back to Dan in the Harvard Business School classroom. He was going for his MBA, but his undergraduate degree from MIT was in electrical engineering and computer science. When he saw the professor repeatedly erase and rewrite numbers on the blackboard to depict what would happen if different parameters were altered, he thought to himself, there's a better way to do this, and I just figured out what it is. Dan's idea turned out to be my introduction to personal computers. I was a business major and took a lot of accounting courses in college, so I spent a lot of time filling accounting ledger paper with numbers. Columns of numbers interacting with each other through formulas and all with totals at the bottom. Of course, ledger paper was like blackboards. If you changed any number to correct an error or to see how a change in one parameter would affect the entire model, the other numbers affected by the change had to be erased and rewritten. That's why we use pencils. During the summer of 1980, I was doing some accounting work for a company and they sat me down in front of an Apple II computer. It was running a program that had been introduced the year before, in 1979. The program was written by our friend Dan Bricklin, and his associate, Bob Frankston. It was the crystallization of the idea Dan had had while watching his professor erase and rewrite numbers on the blackboard. Its name was a portmanteau combining the words visible and calculator. VisiCalc, the world's first electronic spreadsheet. It blew my mind. You change the number and all the numbers that depended on it automatically changed to reflect the new value. Saying what if became as easy as typing in a new number and watching what happened. Going back to the initial condition was just as easy. VisiCalc brought spreadsheets to life. They became exactly what they were always meant to be, tools to quickly and easily determine what would happen to a model if there were changes in the underlying variables. Finally, these personal computers became useful. VisiCalc almost single-handedly turned the so-called microcomputer from a hobby for nerds into a mainstream tool. Anyone could learn to use VisiCalc in minutes, and everyone had something helpful they could do with it. The personal computer revolution began in earnest, and the Apple II, the first computer to run VisiCalc, became a runaway hit. Spreadsheets are obviously still widely popular to this day because they're so useful in so many contexts. And while today's spreadsheets, Microsoft's Excel, Apple's Numbers, and my favorite Google Sheets, look a lot more polished, at their essence, they are VisiCalc. During the early 1980s, VisiCalc was ported to the other members of the Holy Trinity and many other computers as well, including the IBM PC, which was introduced in 1981. In 1983, Mitch Kapor, who was previously head of development for VisiCalc but had left to found Lotus Development Corp., came up with Lotus 123, an electronic spreadsheet program that, unlike the IBM PC version of VisiCalc, was written to take full advantage of that computer's capabilities. By that time, the IBM PC and its clones had come to dominate the personal computer market, and since Lotus 123 was a better program than the IBM PC version of VisiCalc, 123 became a huge success and VisiCalc sales rapidly declined. By 1985, VisiCorp, the company behind VisiCalc, became insolvent, and, ironically, Lotus Development acquired VisiCorp and stopped sales of VisiCalc that year. VisiCalc's life cycle was pretty short. Conceived in 1978, introduced in 1979, peak success in 1982, decline in 1983, and death in 1985. But VisiCalc lives on in the hearts of all the spreadsheets that followed it. And every time any one of us types a number into a spreadsheet, we are honoring Dan Bricklin by benefiting from his idea. I'm Jack Kazoo. Thank you for watching.